Hello, and welcome to Armenian Enough, a podcast about life and identity in the diaspora, with your host, Lara Vanian-Green.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of Armenian Enough. Today's guest is someone who is not afraid to follow her heart, to strive towards a greater vision for herself and for others. Lori risked it all when she left her position as Director of Digital and Multi-Channel Marketing at Janssen Pharmaceutical in Toronto to pursue her entrepreneurial vision of crafting and selling artisanal cheese. That takes guts for sure. VegCheese is now available online as well as in several specialty food stores in Ontario. Their cheese curds are featured in the plant-based poutine at the legendary By Chloe's first Canadian location. I've always wanted to go to New York. I didn't know that Canada had a By Chloe's, but I've always wanted to try their food. I've heard so much about it. I'm super tempted to make a special trip out there to try it myself. You have no idea. Welcome to the show, Lori Sroujian.
Hi, Lara. Thank you so much for having me.
It's such a pleasure. I really, especially as I was looking at the VegCheese website and listening to the descriptions, I was like, I need to try this cheese.
I promise we'll come to California and the rest of the United States as soon as possible as we're scaling the business. That's a huge to-do on my list.
Yes, please. And I met you virtually through Lena Tasjan of the Vegan Armenian Cookbook. She's totally awesome.
Oh, she is wonderful. Absolutely.
I just wanted to give her a little shout out on the show. Tell me a little bit about your background and the role that Armenian culture played in your upbringing.
Absolutely. So I was born and raised in Montreal. My family moved to Montreal from Lebanon in 84, right before I was born. Like most families leaving Lebanon during the Civil War, they settled in Canada, in Montreal. And I was raised with a very Armenian traditional household where we spoke Armenian, we ate Armenian, we loved Armenian. You know, it was a very beautiful upbringing. And up until 18 years old, I went to Armenian school. Actually, 16 years old, I went to Armenian school and then went to French school for a couple of years and then moved to Toronto because of my father's work. And we established ourselves here and have been here ever since.
What does your dad do? Or what did he do?
What he did before he joined this venture, he was in the import business, import-export, mainly car parts and automotive pieces to Cuba. So he did that for quite some time. But growing up, he was juggling, like any newcomer to North America, he was juggling a number of different jobs, whether it was in, distributing newspapers, working at a bakery, always working to support the family, both him and my mom. My mom was an artist, so she painted decoy ducks growing up, and she did that for, I'd say, over 10 years. So, when I think of my mom as a child, I remember her just painting ducks. And now she is an artist. She's pursuing her dream in different ways. But that was my upbringing. My family was always there for us. I have two siblings. I have an older sister, Garin, and a younger brother, Aden. They were, very involved in our day-to-day lives, but also working to support us.
So what role did Armenian food play in your childhood?
Oh, so much. That's mainly what we ate growing up, prior to transitioning to this plant-based vegan world. It was a lot of Armenian traditional cuisine, a lot of Middle Eastern, Lebanese cuisine too, the hummus and the tabbouleh and whatnot. So it was very ethnic, as you would say, and we really enjoyed that. And the dinner table was always a way for us to get together and come together at the end of the day. Even to this day, it's our, we don't eat on our own. We always eat as a family. We don't start before everyone's sitting down. And that was the way where, that we were raised. That's where we united and connected and shared and opened up and were vulnerable and supported one another. So food to me, for my family, has been such an integral part of our upbringing and our lives right now to this day. So my dad does a lot of the cooking. He's taken over the kitchen. He found a new passion in the last few years. And, every day he cooks a beautiful dish, whether it's Armenian or not. We just really, truly, deeply enjoy eating.
I love that your dad is the main chef, because people always talk about their mom's cooking or their grandmother's cooking. My grandmothers were great cooks, but my mom couldn't cook to save her life. So my dad was actually the one that cooked when I was a kid. And he grew up in Syria, and he also used to cook like the best Armenian / Middle Eastern foods. It was so good. Like anything he made was delicious, and he really loved it. So I can totally relate to like the man of the house being the one that does a lot of the cooking.
Isn't that beautiful? And it's such a great role model to all of us and my brother as well, that there's no real gender stereotypes in the household. Mom and dad did both the cooking and the cleaning and whatnot. It was very evenly divided. So that's the kind of household I was raised in.
Nice. Tell me the story about how you and your family became interested in veganism. How did that come about?
We were very heavy meat eaters and dairy consumers growing up, and we never really considered living a life with no animal products on our tables. But that changed pretty much overnight when my dad had a stroke about almost 5 years ago now. It's a 3 a.m. phone call that no one wants to get. And that just turned our lives upside down. At the time, as you're mentioning, I was working for Janssen Pharmaceuticals in digital marketing, and I just could not really focus. Actually, no, sorry, I was a GlaxoSmithKline at the time. My apologies, in pharmaceuticals as well. And I had a hard time focusing. I wanted to be with my family. It was a very difficult time for all of us. Thank God he survived his stroke, and he's recovered now, especially after all these years. But going to work, it was difficult for me knowing that, I'm away from my family. I'm not doing something I'm passionate about. But, that was at the back of my mind. I always knew I wanted to do something with my family, but I didn't know what it was. And when my brother's girlfriend, now fiance, she's a vegan. She's been a longtime vegetarian and a longtime vegan too, introduced us to a new way of consuming food for specifically health reasons, right? We really started evaluating the food on our plates, and we're like, is it okay if we eat this much meat? Like, is it okay if we eat this much dairy? Dad shouldn't be, even in the hospital, they were giving him meat and dairy and whatnot. So we're like, if the hospital's giving it must be good for him. But we did some digging, did a lot of research, watched all those documentaries, read a lot of books, and as a family, we sat down.
Can I slow you down a little?
Of course.
I'm sorry. Can I slow you down a little bit and just ask, because it's interesting for me, and it might be interesting to the people who are listening, who are maybe because a lot of people think about it or like, I wish I could be vegan, and then we all hear the same things, but I can't give up meat, but it's bad for my health, but I'm not going to get enough protein, but I love cheese, which we'll talk about in a moment.
Of course,
but
yes.
Was there a special documentary or book that really kind of got you thinking? Because it's not an easy transition to make. Well, let me take that back. It can be an easy transition to make, but psychologically, there are a lot of hurdles to overcome from, going from a meat and dairy-based diet to an all plant-based diet. You have to change a lot of things, and that can be overwhelming for some people. But I'm just curious if there's any particular movie or book or anything that helps you.
Absolutely. So What the Health on Netflix was a huge one that after, after watching the content and really understanding the lies that we've been told growing up, that you need milk for calcium, you need meat for protein, really just opened my eyes and my family's eyes on what we've been taught all these years, and started making us question whether or not the diets we were consuming, and it wasn't unhealthy per se, it was very Mediterranean diet, but it was still meat-centric. It started to make us question, is this actually harming us or benefiting us? And we realized that this is not the direction that we should be heading in. And personally, my cholesterol levels were going up, and I was in my early 30s at the time, and I was like, okay, no, I cannot have a similar fate to, my grandma who passed away from diabetes, and my father who had a stroke, and there's heart disease in the family. So I knew that personally I had to make the change, but also I needed and wanted to bring my family along, and they were very open to it. My dad's stroke was a very big eye-opening experience for all of us, and we were willing to consider this as an alternative way of eating. And so that documentary, Forks Over Knives, was another one that was quite influential. And then I got the book, How Not to Die. I believe it's Michael Greger.
Yes. I'm listening to that right now on Audible, and it is just reinforcing so much of how my husband has been vegan for almost 30 years. I have been vegan just since we got married, and except I'll subtract 2 years from when I was eating eggs, so we'll call that 11 years. But sort of long time vegan, and that book, How Not to Die, has really, really got me thinking about the incredible, not just benefits of eating plant-based, but truly like the harm that can happen from eating the regular animal-based foods that everyone eats. And I don't think people realize how it's impacting them. They think cancer is a thing that just happens to people, or heart disease is inevitable. Diabetes is, inevitable if it's in your family line. And those things don't have to be true. They can really be affected by what you eat. I'm so impressed that you found all of this stuff and did all this research, and that your family was open to it, because sometimes that's the hurdle.
Absolutely. And I'm very pleased with that too, because it made the transition so much easier, because we would, get together to have family dinners, and we were making plant-based foods, and it wasn't, just me trying to force it upon them. And I'd come over and there's meat on the table. No, we decided as a family to give this a shot. And as we were transitioning, which was a quick transition, our eyes also opened up to, the cruelty of factory farming, which we I would say, turned a blind eye to, not wanting to know, like us being animal lovers. I have my dog Chalo, and he's part of the family. So starting to find that connection between Chalo and a cow, Chalo and a pig. I love bacon, but I also love Chalo. Am I really an animal lover? And can I claim to be an animal lover if I'm not loving all animals? So that, dissonance that I've had over the years, it was starting to sort of, the dots were connecting, and I just couldn't. All of us, we just couldn't. My sister, my brother, my mom, and my dad, like we once that connection was made, we could not go back. So that's been, there's the health aspect, of course, but also there's the animal side of things, and of course the environmental. So it's all three of them combined has allowed us to stick to this newfound way of eating and living, I would say.
That makes me emotional to hear how you connected the dots from your dog to other animals, because that's like, even in the vegan world, it's one of the most, what's the word I'm thinking of? Inflammatory things that you can say to someone, like, well, would you eat your dog? Like, if you would eat that burger, like, would you eat your dog? What's the difference? And it's just kind of looked at societally as like, now you've gone too far.
Yes, exactly.
But the truth There's very little difference. And from what I hear and read, pigs are far more intelligent than dogs to begin with. Not that we're going to eat based on intelligence.
Yeah. Yes.
But you know what? That connection really is there. And as much as my dad doesn't eat a lot of meat, he eats almost none, but you can't take away his cheese and you can't take away his eggs. And he doesn't see that because you're not killing the animal, that those things, maybe shouldn't be a part of your diet. But he always did say to me, even when I was a little kid, because I guess back in Syria, they had chickens roaming around their yard. And if you wanted to have chicken for dinner, you had to kill it. So he could never do that. He could never bring himself to kill the chicken, even when it was like his turn to go and decapitate the poor bird. He couldn't do it. And so he would always tell me, if I had to kill my own animals, I would become vegetarian in an instant.
Interesting.
And I think that,
most people are like that too, right? Most people going to the grocery store, seeing their packaged meat, are purchasing it without making the connection that this once was a living, breathing being that most of the time lived a very torturous life and had a very miserable end. And most people I didn't want to make that connection either. So I completely understand. So, yeah.
I do too. I mean, we weren't born vegan, right? We ate the regular diet that our parents fed us and that everyone around us was eating. But there does come a time, at least for those of us who have decided to go plant-based or vegan, that you do make those connections and that you want to know. And I think that's, in general, part of my personality. I'm very curious. I want to know things. So I was a vegetarian. I became vegetarian when I was 14. I was sitting at an El Pollo Loco and I bit into something gross in the chicken. And all of a sudden, like a flash, I imagined myself biting into an actual chicken, like with feathers and everything. And I got so disgusted. I told my mom right then and there, I'm never eating meat again. And for 10 years, I was a vegetarian.
Wow.
But when I got together with my husband, he was like, why are you still drinking milk and eating eggs? And I said, just stop. And he said, listen, when you're ready to know, tell me. And I said, okay. And for a year, I didn't say anything. I was like, I'm not ready. I don't want to know. Because I knew as soon as he told me, as soon as I watched a video, I'm a very compassionate person, I wouldn't be able to. So for a year, I wasn't ready to give up those things. And one day I just went up to him and I was like, all right, show me what you got.
Yep.
And, when he did, I just couldn't anymore.
Yeah, once you can unsee what you see, especially if you're an empath or highly sensitive, it's hard to ignore the truth that you now know, the knowledge that you've gained.
Right. So even though you and your family were highly motivated to take on a plant-based lifestyle, what were some of the struggles or challenges that you faced early on? What did you have a difficult time with?
Meat was actually very easy to remove from our diet. So there's a lot of really great substitutes out there. So that was great. And we discovered, soy curls and whatnot. So we weren't really missing meat. It was just cheese. We loved cheese. We used to eat cheese all the time. I used to live right across the street from a cheese shop, like a cheese boutique. And I used to have friends over and would have cheese platters. Like my entertaining world revolved around cheese. And that was a huge piece of my world that I had to figure out how to replace. So went to the grocery store and bought, all the plant-based cheeses out there, and I'd come home and try them. And I'm like, this doesn't taste like cheese. Like the nut-based cheeses tasted more like hummus to me. The other cheeses, the less artisanal ones, tasted synthetic to me. And I just did not enjoy any of the options that were on the market. So I went in my kitchen, in my condo kitchen, and started experimenting with, different ingredients. And that's really how it all started. It was really for my family and I and my friends when they came over to enjoy. This was never ever meant to be a business.
I mean, I'm so interested in the process of how you come about this, because I'm also thinking in the back of my mind, my cousin's husband is Armenian from France, and he's very, very particular about his cheese. And that's the one reason he always gives to why he could never go like this vegan cheese is like disgusting. Like it's nothing close. He's a connoisseur of cheese. So I'm sure living in Canada, you have a lot of French influence there too. What did you try? How did you come up with this?
Yeah, so it was a lot of trial and error. I'd say hundreds of batches or small, tiny batches at the time. I knew I wanted it to be nut-free because my nephew has a dairy intolerance, so I wanted him to be able to bring the cheese to school. And I, started experimenting with soy milk, organic soy milk, and I wanted to really figure out how I could turn soy milk into cheese. And it was not an easy undertaking, but I became obsessed with it. I would come home after a long day of work and I'd head to the kitchen and I would try and put together the ingredients. And it's so finicky that, the ingredients separate, the oil separates. I knew it had to be coconut oil and a soy milk base. And, I researched online, didn't really come up with too much. I researched and really tried to figure out what ingredients solidify the cheese, what ingredients melt the cheese, and a lot of research. And after oh my gosh, so many trials, finally came up with the same ingredients, the same formulation that we use in much, much larger batches now of our mozzarella cheese. And it was a eureka moment when it happened. And I took it out of the fridge. I sliced it, looks like cheese, ate it, tastes like mozzarella cheese. And then I melted it and it melted like cheese. And I could not believe what happened, and had my, family over and they tried it. They could not believe it. They loved it, brought it to work. All my colleagues were like, what is this? This tastes like cheese. It's amazing. And what I did afterwards is added different types of flavors to it, whether it was smoked paprika or garlic, chives, truffle, which I absolutely love truffle. So tried to add different flavors, natural ingredients, I should say, not artificial flavors in any way. And it tasted fantastic. And at that point, I was like, you know what? I can live with this because I used to love mozzarella. I love my pizzas. So once I figured out that substitute, it was very easy for me and my family to cut dairy and cheese from our diets. And that's really how it started. And up until this point, it was still not going to be a business. I had a comfortable full-time job, although I wasn't entirely happy. I still, it was my career. My career has been in digital marketing for over 15 years. And I was going to grow up the ranks of whatever organization and be in marketing. But in my heart, I knew I wanted to start something entrepreneurial. So it didn't really click that this was going to be it until colleagues and friends wanted to start buying this cheese from me. And at that point, it clicked that maybe this is something that I should be pursuing with my family. And that's really how it started.
It's such a cool story. And it's just, and pardon the pun, but it's just so organic. It's like
it was,
really...
yeah.
really stems from your life, from your experiences, from the things that you learn. And it must be your perseverance that led to this, because I cannot imagine making 50 batches of something that wasn't quite what I wanted. I would be like, it's impossible. And I would stop. But I'm very glad that you didn't. And I'm very sad that I haven't been able to taste your cheese, because I want to so badly. When people ask me about like, okay, I want to go vegan or I want to try, what do I do about cheese? I have like a set thing that I go through. I'm like, okay, what do you want it for? Like, do you want a hard cheese? Do you want a cheese that melts? Or do you want a spreadable cheese? Because I have different recommendations for all those things. But on the website for VegCheese, it says that it's nut-free, gluten-free, which I also am. And the cheese bubbles, broils, and melts. I mean, just saying that actually it makes me crave it. How did you come up with a cheese that does all of those things?
I honestly don't even know. It was a strength from above, I think. My perseverance, yes, and then coupled with some other magic that is indescribable that pointed me in this direction. And I still can't believe, whenever we produce the cheese, that's what we eat at home, of course. And every time I make it, it's like it's the first time I'm making it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is our cheese! I can't believe it. After 4 years, I'm still surprised by how it behaves. It's been a lot of fun.
How have you felt after transitioning? It's just like physically after transitioning to a plant-based diet.
I've been feeling great, less, bloated, clearer mind. If this diet was not helpful in any way, I wouldn't have been able to build this business because I work very, very long hours. Every single day I'm working. So if I was lacking protein or any kind of nutrition, I wouldn't have been healthy enough to build this business. So I've been feeling great. My family's been feeling great. My brother, even, he, bodybuilds at the gym, and he's entered a competition in the past being vegan, and he does not look like he's lacking any protein. That's for sure. We've been feeling fantastic. We have not been feeling weak. Our minds aren't clouded anyway. It's been the best thing that's happened to us. That's for sure.
Oh, how's your dad's health?
He's doing great. He's doing, thank God, he's doing really, really well. And this business, this company has given him new life too, because he's very, very hardworking. And after a stroke and whatnot, he needed this kind of purpose. And this business has allowed him to help us, him to have this bigger purpose, this combined purpose for the family and to the planet and to our customers. And he heads up our production now, and he absolutely loves it. He's, running around. He's very involved in the day-to-day, and it's just such a blessing for me to come to work every single day with my favorite people. And I thank God every single day for it. Yeah.
That is so sweet. Wow. I'm just curious, since do you live in a community where there are other Armenians, and is there an Armenian community where you live?
Yes, and in Toronto, there is a big Armenian community, and I've been part of the Young Professionals of Toronto. I was part of the executive committee there for many years, but once this business started taking off, I had to part ways and pass the torch on to the younger generation. So my brother has been part of the group for quite some time now, but this business has been keeping me so busy that it's been very hard to be as involved, and especially with COVID now, it's been tough too. But yeah, there is a very big Armenian community here in Toronto.
Well, I was asking because there's that, stereotype that is maybe a tiny bit true about vegans being very preachy about what they eat. Because once you discover this thing, and once your eyes are open to some things, there is a part of you that just wants everyone to feel the benefits, or to not harm themselves with food, or to not harm the animals or whatever. So I'm just curious, in terms of, it's not that common to see Armenians of your parents' age and generation be vegan. I'm curious if your dad tries to bring others on board, or how it is in the Armenian community when you go out to whatever, a barahantes or weddings or this or that, or another person's house. How does that work?
Yeah, it's a little bit difficult at weddings, to be quite frank, even though, you do mention on the invite that you are vegan. The options aren't usually the greatest. But with Armenian cuisine, there's always something to eat, whether it's the hummus or the fattoush or whatnot, if it's more of a Middle Eastern influence, the tabbouleh. There's really always something that we can find when it comes to, going to people's houses. When we're bringing a dish or whatnot, it's always vegan, of course, and often that's what's consumed the most. And for me, I've never really been preachy about it because I find that sometimes that's a bit of a deterrent to what it is I'm trying to do. I try and convert with taste,
Very
even
smart.
if it's not. Yeah, exactly. It's more, strategic with my approach versus, pushing, because I've noticed that the more I've been pushed in the past, the more I want to do the opposite. So I really try and bring people along, even with my friends when I go over and, I bring a dish that's plant-based and they're enjoying it. They realize that there is this misconception that vegan food isn't delicious or it's not great or they feel bad. No one feels bad for how I eat. I post content, whether it's on my personal page or on the company Instagram, and they realize that, their vegan food can be quite delicious. And even a few weeks ago, I went to a barbecue with friends and my mom made börek with our cheese in it. And people were raving about it all night. It was the first dish that was finished. And, they kept coming to me and asking me and wanting to know more about this diet, this lifestyle. And even though they're not necessarily going to be vegan or maybe not immediately, maybe down the road or whatnot, they realize that dropping meat and dairy from their diet, even if it's not full-time, can have its benefits, and they're not sacrificing their taste buds, because that was very important to us. We wanted to transition, but we wanted to still enjoy food because it was such an integral part of our lives, and gently nudging people into this lifestyle has been, I found, the best way.
Maybe it's also because Canadians are just nicer. Americans are a little pushy.
Yes, perhaps.
Oh man, that is too funny. Unfortunately I didn't have your cheese to do it with, but I followed your recipe on VegCheese last night to make my own vegan cheese boiled egg. Funnily enough, since you mentioned that your mom made it, my daughter has been begging me to make it because it's one of the things she hasn't been able to eat. So I did the best that I could. It was a good first effort. Let me tell you, it was absolutely delicious, but it was a little too oily and the cheese was a little too melty. So yeah. I'm gonna experiment with that too. I think my second batch is gonna be it.
Amazing.
She loved it.
That's so great. And it's all about experimenting, trying new dishes, new flavors, and eventually something just, clicks.
Yeah, I think in my heart of heart, I wanted the answer to the question to be like, yes, my dad has told all his friends, and now like there's a growing vegan Armenian community.
Yeah, no, unfortunately not. There's few and far between us here, but I do know a handful of vegans that we stay connected with, and should probably start an Armenian vegan community here in Toronto. That would be fantastic, actually.
That would be great. We started one. It wasn't me, but there was one that was started before COVID in LA, Armenian Vegans of Los Angeles. And it was really, really great. But I think COVID just killed it because we would have monthly events. We would go to a farm sanctuary, or we would have like a vegan potluck Thanksgiving where everyone would bring a couple of dishes, and they were great events. And just to be able to meet with other Armenian vegans, because that is a very select group of individuals. It was really fun. It was a special community.
That's such a great idea. I love that idea. That's fantastic.
So taking a step back to what we were talking about before, from going to a corporate executive to an entrepreneur, I mean, it's kind of scary no matter what you're selling, but particularly I think if you're doing something like this, it's a huge leap. How did you end up making that transition? Like, how do you go from making batches of cheese in your condo kitchen to scaling it on, I'm assuming, industrial level? Like, how do you do that?
Yeah, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of perseverance and being comfortable with the unknown, because my background is not in food and food production. I've taken some culinary courses at George Brown College here in Toronto, but that was mainly for my own passion. And there was not much guidance on how to take this product and scale it and then enter into retailers and a distribution channel, et cetera, et cetera. So I was at my corporate job and I knew that this is something that I wanted to do. I rented a shared commercial kitchen downtown Toronto, and I ended up signing up to a vegan festival in Mississauga. That's actually where we're headquartered now, in Mississauga. And we prepared the product. So we got our food handlers certificates, my whole family, and we, started making batches of cheeses in this kitchen and brought it to this festival. And, we had the brand name at the time. So my background's in marketing, so that the branding has been very important to me. So we were sitting with the family one night and made the decision that we're going to pursue this while I was working full time. And I asked the family, what should we call this business? And my brother, out of nowhere, said, call it VegCheese. And we all laughed. We said, oh, this is so funny. And then we took a step back and we're like, actually, that's a pretty cool name. And I checked the website, the URL, whether it's taken. Nope, VegCheese.com available. How is that possible? So I registered the .com, the .ca, all different iterations of it. Then Instagram, I was like, let me see if Instagram's not taken. Nope, Instagram's not taken. Amazing. So booked all the handles, the social media handles at the time, and came up with a logo, hired a designer to do the logo, created these really basic labels, and we went to this Veg Fest in Mississauga. And I did not know how I was going to do. We made about 300 cheeses that day. And at the time, thankfully, it was pre-COVID where we could sample our products, and almost everyone sampling the product was buying it. It was just an incredible experience. That was really our market validation to test if our product is actually resonating with larger audience, and not just my family and friends and my colleagues and whatnot. And at the end of the day, we had sold out. We had sold about 300 cheeses. Went home,
Wow.
And it really hit me at that point that this is something that I cannot ignore. That not only from a business perspective, really, but just it would be such a disservice to have this great product that people are loving and not bring it to the world. So once it was validated and I knew it was going to sell and people were loving it and they were posting on social media, tagging us, and there was chatter happening online, emails that we were receiving, how do we get your product? And we had no distribution. We weren't in any retailers. I was literally delivering them one at a time all over the greater Toronto area, just to get product in people's hands, evenings and weekends, because I was working. It was a very consuming role that I had, time-consuming role that I had with Jansen. But I found the time to build this company on the side, and knowing that I was going to do this full time. So that small kitchen was no longer serving us. We wanted to have a larger space and bigger fridges, etc. And I signed up to all the Veg Fests all over the greater Toronto area over the course of the year. And we were going from festival to festival. We changed kitchens. We went into a much larger kitchen called Kitchen 24 in North York in the greater Toronto area. And we stayed there for about 2.5 years. Most of the time I was still full-time. So evenings and weekends, my family and I, my brother, my mom, my dad, and my brother's fiance, whenever she could help us out, would come, and we'd just make batches upon batches of cheeses for all of these events and festivals. And it was taking off.
Wait. So for for 2 years, you still kept your other job and this was your side business?
Absolutely. It was my side gig. Yes.
Oh my God.
It was
Oh my God.
I can't even tell you how insane those years were. It was very stressful, but I knew that we were building something fantastic and I needed to build the foundation. Also, I needed to inject that income into the business. So everything I was making was going into VegCheese. Everything was going into VegCheese. And I knew I needed to pull the plug, but I was so scared of making that leap from, having that constant income stream to really nothing and knowing I'm not going to have that income for quite some time until this business is profitable. I just didn't know when that was going to happen. And then I went into work about 2.5 years ago and called into HR and they dismantled my department. So they shut down the digital marketing department. So I've never been happier in my life. I knew it was the...
Isn't that funny how sometimes when you know a change needs to be made in your life, but you're not quite there, the universe conspires to make that happen?
Absolutely. Because the universe is giving me signs throughout with how well the product's being received. And I knew this is something that I should be doing full time and it needed my full time attention, but I was just terrified. And the universe that day was like, Lori, you got to make the leap. You didn't make the leap. You're going to have to take it whether or not you're ready for it. So I got packaged out and I took everything they gave me and I invested in a piece of equipment. Instead of going on a vacation or buying clothes or what, I'd never really cared much for that. I knew that the business needed capital injection and I took that and bought a filler machine and that was that. And I was full time with VegCheese and I haven't looked back since. So we worked out of that kitchen for quite some time and then COVID hit. All our shows got canceled. At that point, we were at about 15 or so retailers, but we had so many shows that we had planned. And being a startup, you want people to taste your product before they convert. It's very important as a more premium plant-based cheese product, as it's artisanal and it's handcrafted and whatnot. You want people to experience it and it not disappear on shelves. I had to make a very important decision on the direction of the company, and we hadn't started selling online yet because shipping perishables is not easy, especially in the hot summer months. It's not a shelf-stable product where you could just put it in a box and, if it takes 2 weeks to arrive, you don't really care. Shipping fees are expensive. You need insulation. You need ice packs. It needs to be overnight. So I launched our online store on Shopify and it just took off. Just took off at that point.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And you did that specifically because of COVID, you transitioned online?
Yes, and I knew I had to do that, but because of all the shows and how busy I was just trying to keep up with the events, once those were gone, I was able to focus more strategically. So it was a blessing in disguise for us because people were getting more and more comfortable ordering food through online channels. And I, used my marketing and digital marketing background to do proper launch. And that really helps grow our business during those difficult months. So actually our business has grown significantly since before COVID. We got into larger stores. We moved to another kitchen because we needed even more space for us. And then January of this year, I realized, we need more high-tech, more automated equipment because we were getting so exhausted just hand mixing everything and sealing everything by hand. It was very tiring for me and my family, and we were spending very, very long hours in the kitchen just trying to get product out the door. And I said, this is a pivotal point where I need to make the decision on the future of this company. A lot of food companies, what they do, they go to co-packers or co-manufacturers where they, this third party company makes the product, and the entrepreneur, the founders, they are the ones that are dealing with the distribution aspect, the marketing, the back office work. But I knew that I wanted to build a manufacturing business, and I knew I wanted to be close to the product. It being such a difficult product to manufacture, I don't think a lot of co-packers would be willing to take this on. I wanted to have more control over the integrity and the quality of what it is that we're making. So I knew that we needed our own space, our own manufacturing facility. So in April of this year, my brother and I invested in a property in Mississauga. It was a warehouse. And my brother joined VegCheese full-time as well. So he left his full-time gig. He was braver than me. He made the leap. And he joined me full-time. And we got this new space, and we turned a warehouse into a fully operating commercial kitchen with a live workspace up top, like a loft up top. And I have all the machines and our equipment and our walk-in fridge downstairs. So it's been very, very challenging taking an industrial unit and turning it into a kitchen. But I think we've done really well, and we moved in here in August, and we've been loving it.
When you say we moved in here, are you just talking about the kitchen, or are you talking about the live workspace above the kitchen?
Okay, so that's interesting because the kitchen, and I also decided to live here. So I live above the kitchen. So if people talk about skin in the game, it's fully. I'm very, very heavily invested. So I realized that I wasn't spending any time in my condo, so I put my condo up for sale, and I decided to live here for the next little while until I could scale the business to its next stage. So I don't have to deal with Toronto traffic.
Wow. I mean, there's passion and then there's passion. That's a lot.
It is a lot.
That's really impressive.
Thank you. It's been a lot of transitions, moving from different kitchens, personally moving, building the kitchen, and all during COVID, which was a very difficult time for any kind of construction work too, and business-wise too, to scale the business without, the shows and events and everything else that would have like demos and in-store demos. But since then, we've signed up with 2 distributors. They are the ones that manage all our customers at a retail level. We're in over 100 retail stores. We're in about 30 or so restaurants, and then we have our online channel. And it's been very organic.
What's it going to take for you to be able to be in the US market?
Really, the only reason why we're not in the US right now is scaling and being able to produce to support the demand. Because once we enter the US market, it's a whole other game. And at the moment, it's still the 4 of us, by the way. So it's myself, my dad, my mom, and my brother in the kitchen producing. And we were going to hire, but with COVID and, my dad being more high risk, I wanted to keep our bubble quite tight. So I haven't hired anyone, but soon enough, we'll be in the position to have more hands in the kitchen so that we can produce more product, because now we're really trying to keep up with the demand, which is a very, very good problem to have, but also quite stressful.
I know you need some angel investors that just come and just drop money on you, just make it rain on your business.
And there's been opportunities, to be quite frank, with investors reaching out, but I've wanted to keep this with the family, and I've wanted to see how far I could push this without investors. It's a bit of a game for me to see how much we can self-sustain and support the growth with, the profits of the company, and try and keep it for ourselves for as long as possible.
You're very brave. Very, very brave.
Thank you. It takes a lot of, resilience, anti-fragility to get through a lot of the challenges, and a lot of sacrifice. There's been a lot of sacrifices where friends get together and there's events and whatnot where they always know Lori's answer is usually no. So it's been tough, but COVID has been a blessing in a lot of ways where I haven't had a lot of invites or I haven't been, it felt bad not going anywhere. And it's been really all hands on deck with scaling the business for the last 2 years.
I'm one of those people who feels either like national pride or national shame. If there's an Armenian that does something bad, I feel the shame. I feel so proud that you are doing this, that an Armenian person and family is doing this. I think it's amazing. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Oh, thank you, Lara. Thank you so much for that recognition. It's being Armenian is in our it's in our DNA to build businesses, to be resilient, to be comfortable with change. And I know that it's because of my Armenian heritage that I've been able to do this. And I've seen my grandfather, my mom's father, who was such an inspiration for me in Lebanon. He built a plastic manufacturing business called Beko. And he built this from scratch. And he lost it during the war. He built it again. And unfortunately, he lost it one more time and had to, call it quits at that point because he was getting old. But I feel like I have some unfinished business. Generationally, there's a lot of trauma on both sides, from escaping the genocide through Derzor, both my mom and my dad's side, and having to establish themselves in new cities and starting new lives and having to move again and again. So to me, even though, some days I'm like, what am I doing? I had such a comfortable, cushy life. I realized that my pain and my stresses are nothing compared to what mine and yours and our collective ancestry has gone through. And that reminder on a regular basis is what keeps me going.
Wow. That is just incredible. I felt that in my bones. Like we talk a lot about the trauma that is inherited, but maybe not quite enough about the resilience that's inherited. And I think that's something that you have in spades. It's so amazing and brave, and you're doing it with all your heart and you're following your passion. And there's nothing that I love and respect more in life than someone doing that. And by that action, you are creating a better and healthier world, because like you said, you don't have to be vegan, but the more plant-based foods you can eat, the more beneficial it is to your health and to the planet and to animals. So thank you.
Oh my gosh, thank you for your kind words. Yeah, it's to me, it's such a win-win in all aspects. I go to bed at night with a clear mind, knowing that I'm doing the best I can to make this planet a better place, for sure.
I couldn't think of a better note to end the interview on. That is, I love it. I love it. I'm so glad I got a chance to talk to you.
Me too, Lara. Thank you so much for reaching out to me and for having this conversation. And I adore everything that you're doing. And I'm a huge fan of yours too. And thank you for everything that you do for our community. Thank you. I can't wait to one day meet you in person, hopefully.
Yes, please smuggle some cheese in. Just put some in your suitcase.
I'm going to try absolutely. When I'm in town next, I definitely will.
Oh my God, please. Or I will have to come and find you. As soon as my daughter's passport arrives.
Oh, that would be fantastic. I'd love to have you here and show you around at our new facility too, for sure.
That would be really fun. I was thinking, actually, when you were talking, you should, when it's, when COVID is a thing of the past, have little factory tours with little bits of sampling, and you can sell tickets to that too, because that's what Green Bar Distillery, an Armenian-owned distillery in downtown LA, did, and that was really cool to experience. So I was like, all these different aspects that you can.
That's such a great idea. Thank you for that tip.
Sure, anytime. Now let's move on to our 5 fun questions. And let me ask you something that maybe for you will be easy to answer, even though most people find this very difficult to answer. But what is your favorite Armenian food?
So my favorite is manta for sure. So we veganize the manta though. We use whether it's Impossible ground or Beyond Meat ground and season it. And I just absolutely love manta, and I don't feel like I'm missing out on it. I remember growing up, I would, my mom would make it, and I'd sneak into the fridge and I'd eat it cold in the morning. So good. Now I'm craving some manta.
It's so good. And you actually reminded me the last time that I made it, which was many, many years ago because it's labor intensive. I use like an Eve's ground meat, but I haven't used Beyond Meat, which is my favorite. I'm not a huge Impossible Burger fan, but I love the Beyond Meat.
It's delicious with Beyond. It's so good.
Might have to make that. I'm gonna have to also make it gluten-free.
But that's gonna be. You can make it happen, I'm sure.
I've done it. It's just, I'm like the most difficult person to feed anywhere. My people hate inviting me places. Like
my sister's the exact same way. She's vegan, gluten-free. So I know the pains she goes through to be able to accommodate her diet, but she makes it work. You guys make it work.
Yes. Yeah. I feel so bad sometimes because people are like, oh, we made this each just for you. It's vegan. I'm like, thank you so much. And then I'm thinking, but it has bulgur wheat and I can't eat it.
Oh gosh, that's funny.
The trials and tribulations.
Absolutely.
The next question is, do you understand both Western and Eastern Armenian?
I was raised in speaking Western Armenian. I was in Armenia with a family about 5 years ago. I had some challenges with words here and there, but I pretty much understand it. Yes, I'm fluent. Yeah, we speak Armenian at home. That's all we speak.
Is your brother's fiance? I mean, none of my business, but is your brother's fiance Armenian?
Yes, Talar. She is Armenian. She's fantastic. Yes.
Well, thank you, Talar, for putting this entire family on the vegan path. I think you deserve your recognition too.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, she's been an instrumental factor in all this. Without Talar, none of this would be possible. So I'm ever grateful to her and her gentle, kind nudges. She's such a beautiful soul.
And that is the difference that one person can make. Look at all this change that she unknowingly affected.
Absolutely.
What is the most Canadian thing about you?
What is the most Canadian thing about me?
I mean, outside being really nice and not pushy.
That's a really good question. This one's going to be tough to answer. The most Canadian thing about me, now that I know my roots and my family's roots are in Canada, I can plan ahead for myself and hopefully my future family too. So there's no fear in me that we're going to have to move due to war, due to genocide or whatever the reason. So that mentality of building for generations to come, I think is very Canadian of me. Whereas my family and my parents and their great-grandparents did not have the luxury to be able to have.
Wow, that is profound. Now I feel like this next question is way too frivolous after that deep answer that you just gave.
Of course. All good.
It is the next question. And moving on. Do you have a favorite Armenian celebrity?
Do I have Sroujian. I love her music. Yeah, I love her music. I would say Sroujian, and she has a beautiful jewelry line too, which I've bought a few pieces. So yeah, I would say she would be my favorite.
Cool. And lastly, and most importantly to me personally, do you know how to read Armenian coffee cups?
Oh, no, I don't. I could pretend like I do, but no, unfortunately not. But I am obsessed with having people read my coffee cup, tarot cards, you name it. I'm very much in love with the mystical, magical side of the world, and I'm really into it, but I wish I had.
We have this in common.
Oh, yes, you too. Yay.
Totally. Do you drink Armenian coffee?
I do. Yes, I definitely do. Yeah, with my family, it's usually Canadian coffee that we're drinking on a day-to-day basis, but once in a while, we'll have Armenian coffee. And I always turn it around at the end of it, and I pretend to read what I'm seeing. But I used to drink Armenian coffee with my grandma almost every single morning before she passed. So it brings back a lot of really great memories.
Whenever we can on Mondays, we try to post an Armenian coffee cup, and then I'll come online and interpret it a little bit, and then just on Instagram, and then our followers can comment too and see what they see. So if you would please drink a cup for us and take a few photos of the inside, I would love to post that along with this episode.
Oh my gosh, that's adorable. I'm definitely going to do that. What a great idea.
It's fun. And, over the summer, we didn't really do it because people didn't send in their cups. So I think once we start posting photos of cups, people will start sending in their own photos. I accept, if your sister, your brother, your mom, whoever wants to submit cups. I love having a backlog of Armenian coffee cups to post. So feel free to take photos of everyone's cup.
Absolutely. The Sroujian family is in.
Does your last name come from coffee? I mean, Sroujian, is it?
It's so funny. We were just talking about that with the family this morning. It used to be called Kahvecian, but my grandfather, because kahve is coffee in Turkish, there must have been someone in my ancestry that was involved with coffee. I don't really know the details there. So my grandfather changed it to Sroujian. So my last name is Sroujian. But then during moving from, my dad's family actually initially moved to Aleppo in Syria. And during that move, I believe from there to Lebanon, the Arabic paperwork was misspelled our last name. So Kahvejan turned into Sroujian, Sroujian turned into Sroujian. So yes, there is coffee in my last name.
Wow. I'm so glad I asked. And I've never heard this last name before.
It's a totally made up last name. So whoever has the last name Sroujian is related to me somehow.
I love it. How perfect. I'm sorry, Lori, but you're going to have to learn how to read Armenian coffee cups. It's your family's heritage.
And you know what? It's going to be added to my long to-do list, but I'm going to try and prioritize this because this is important.
You're so delightful to speak with. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast and for telling us your amazing story. And I'm so proud of you. And I feel like it's Jagadakir. It's written on your forehead. Your destiny is to achieve great things. And I can't wait to be a witness to everything that you end up doing.
Oh, that's so very kind of you, Lana. Thank you so much for taking the time. And I really, really enjoyed our conversation.
Oh, thank you. Anytime you want to come back on.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Count me in.
You can reach Lori on the company website at www.vegcheese.com and on Instagram at VegCheese. As always, all the info will be in the show notes for this episode. I'd like to say a special thank you to all of our patrons. Your support is the backbone of this podcast, and I love and appreciate you more than I can say. Whether you're a patron or not, if you enjoy the conversations we bring you, please share our podcast on your social media so that all the people you love can listen too. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, remember that you are always more than enough.